issues today. It's about people in society in general who don't productive members than it does in a group by taking care of them. Okay? And a society that takes care of the elderly is a society that's going to be more compassionate toward other people with infirmities as well. So the general principle that life is valuable in and of itself, not as defined. One of the things that we do, America is very definition conscious. And you ask somebody who they are, where they're from, and what do you do? Okay? So what do you do is the thing that defines you in this society. And what this commandment says is it's what you are that is important. The fact that you are alive. When I go down the street with a veteran's hat on and somebody says thank you for your service, I say you're worth it. Okay? It doesn't matter what color you happen to be, whoever they are, if they're a grateful person, they're certainly worth whatever I did in service. So that's how I feel about it. Every life is valuable. And this commandment is not just about father and mother, but it's a general attitude toward taking care of people who can't take care of themselves, and that their lives are of value. Sometimes people, they go into a nursing home and they think, well, I'm not worth anything anymore. I'm a burden on everybody. No, you're not. You are someone who is helping to define society by how we treat people who might otherwise be considered a burden. Okay? And it's an understanding also that because we are all God's children, that every life is valuable. Every life is a gift, and we need to respect it and honor it, and make sure that we don't mistreat anyone or just neglect anybody, because God doesn't neglect anybody.
I appreciate you saying that so much, because my grandmother used to say, and now my mother, they don't, Mama not so much now, but Granny, she used to say, I don't understand why God is keeping me here, but that's a beautiful point to say, so we can show you how we should take care of people, how the Lord wants us to treat you. I don't know, whatever you said, I don't know, but that's a beautiful thing to say.
Just telling, the reason we are taking care of you is because you are valuable. What you have done in society, what you have done for us as a family, was a gift, and this is our exchange. Okay, doesn't mean we're even either. It's just that your life is valuable, and it is. And you see a difference. Like, for instance, if you go to a socialist country where medication is ostensibly free, you will find that there are tremendous restrictions on the kind of care that an elderly person can get. And in our society, we engage in much more heroic efforts to preserve life medically, as much as we can do. The idea is not how can we cut back on the cost, so much as how much, what can we do to preserve this life that is valuable. And I've seen, I know the kind of care that my dad had and my mother had. And my mother, certainly, she was in terrible decline, and she got loving care right up to the day she died. My dad too. And they did everything they could to, treat sores that wouldn't heal. They didn't just let her waste away. She was going to, but it wasn't that she went into that decline alone or without care. So, everybody's life is valuable, and this commandment is all about that. It presents a societal attitude toward people. Okay, a general respect.
How about the Jewish versus Muslim on this subject matter? Are they both caring like that, or no?
It depends on if the, okay, this is my experience, okay, my experience. Having been in several Muslim countries. If they have the money, they will take care of their own. If you are not one of their own and you're in their country, they'll get you through whatever crisis it is, but then they want you to leave the country. When you get, like for instance, in UAE, if you're an expatriate from Pakistan or India or someplace, when you get to a certain age, your work visa is canceled. You are not allowed to retire in UAE. They have no interest in having anybody there who's going to be a burden on society. In Jewish communities, they really do honor father and mother. They look after them much more. You don't see the general compassion for people at large so much in Muslim countries. And they have an excellent healthcare system over in UAE, but they have just lavish amounts of money to do that. If I got sick over there, I could walk into a pharmacy. I wouldn't need a prescription. I could buy medication. You can't buy any painkillers, but you can buy any other medication just over the counter without a prescription. You can go to Johns Hopkins has several hospitals over there. Mayo Clinic is over there. They have first-class health care. But if you're going to be a burden on their society and you ain't one of them, you ain't. That's it. Contrast that with the way we are looking after people who don't even belong here. That don't have visas, that just glom onto our society. And, they can walk into an emergency room and get help. So it's a different attitude altogether. You don't see the same kind of, like for instance, the Red Cross, the Red Crescent over there is not based on volunteers. There's a sheikh who owns the Red Crescent in a certain area, and he runs the operation, and he funds it, and that's it. Over here you have all kinds of people volunteering for Red Cross. They come from, we came from everywhere to help us when we had a hurricane event here in North Carolina. We had people from Hawaii coming in for the Red Cross. But people volunteer because of this kind of attitude. Okay, over there, you don't have the same volunteer stuff. And over here, the Red Cross has regulations on how we manage things or mismanage things. They have regulations. Over there, whatever the sheikh says is how the Red Crescent's going to be run in his area. That's the way it is. So, a little different attitude, okay? Not so much compassion for others outside your group in Islamic countries. And not so much compassion even for certain people within your group in Islamic countries. Women don't get the same kind of care that men do. It's just like that. Just take a look at what the Taliban's doing. And now that's not indicative of all of Islam by any means. But what the Taliban are doing right now is systematically destroying Afghanistan. And they're not caring for women, and they're not using half of their economy. They're using all of our military stuff, but they're not using half of their economy. So, anyway, moving on. You shall not murder. Okay? The old King Jimmy says, you shall not kill. Okay? That's too broad. Okay? The word really is, you shall not murder, which means that other kinds of killing are sanctioned. Killing in war, killing as a form of justice is permissible, and in fact encouraged. But you have to take a look at when you go to war, is there a line between justifiable killing and murder on the battlefield? Because murder does occur on the battlefield a lot. Collateral damage is really hard to, it's really hard to figure out whether or not that falls into the category of murder. There was a tremendous amount of collateral damage in World War II. A lot of innocent people, people who were non-combatants, were killed. More civilians were killed in World War II than soldiers. And that's typically what's going on. That's what's going on in Gaza right now. You have an awful lot of civilians who are getting killed. Although Hamas is inflating the numbers, and they don't differentiate between combatants and non-combatants. They park themselves among non-combatants so that if their combatants get killed, the non-combatants get killed as well. So, I mean, they're playing that kind of game. And to me, when you deliberately put innocent civilians at risk, you are, and they die as a result, then I think that is murder. I think Hamas is responsible for murdering their own people by putting them at risk the way they do, wantonly. And if you take a look at the way rockets are sent into Israel, they are targeted at population centers. They are not targeted at military targets. They're, you know, just like what the Russians are doing in Ukraine is murder, because they're not targeting necessarily military sites. They're targeting apartment buildings, you know, hospitals. They're blowing up stuff that has nothing to do with the combat. I can understand hitting infrastructure, but I can't understand hitting apartment complexes just wantonly, which is what they're doing. And the same thing with Hamas. You know, Israel is criticized for collateral damage in Gaza, but when they fly rockets into Israel, they don't care where they land. They really don't care where they land. They're not that precise, and they know it. One of the things that I came to appreciate a lot was, and this is really evident in Desert Storm. I think Desert Storm was just a whole new concept, but the ability to target a munition against a specific target and not another target, another indiscriminate target, was phenomenal. It was just phenomenal. And there are a lot of Christians who say, well, we shouldn't be supporting the weapons industry and stuff, but the more precise you can make your munitions, the less collateral damage happens, you know. So that now, if we want to, we can take out an individual without bothering the people next door.
And the way they took out that leader,
Yeah.
I mean, just hit him right on his head,
Yes.
took him out.
Yes. Yes. And did not bother the people in the next room.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that is unreal.
Yes. But it's real now. And you compare that to the crudeness of what's going on in the other direction. It's amazing that people are all hyped up over what Israel is doing or what we do, when we do everything we can to minimize collateral damage. So, anyway, don't murder, okay? But you can defend yourself. You can defend your country. You can, you know. If you initiate a war to take somebody else's, that's designed to take somebody else's stuff when they don't present a threat to you, that entire war is mass murder. So, you know, Germany had no reason to attack Poland at all. Germany had no reason to attack Russia at all. Everything that they did was murder and theft. Every civilian death, even every military death, as far as I'm concerned, was murder on the part of the Germans. Neither shall you commit adultery. Okay, well, there goes all the fun. Yeah, Adultery is, first of all, adultery is started out, it started out as having sex with somebody else's partner. Okay? A married person having sex with somebody who's married to somebody else. That was the bottom line on adultery for a long time. But then the Pharisees got a hold of it, and adultery got much bigger. Adultery included any kind of sex out of wedlock. Adultery included cross-dressing. Adultery included a woman assuming a role that was not appropriate to her, like, for instance, criticizing her husband in public. These definitions of, and of course anything that had to do with homosexuality was considered adultery as well. So it got beyond just messing around with somebody else's spouse. Okay? And a lot of this, I can understand the expansion, because in many respects the expansion are things that tend to undermine society in general. Okay? So just being libertine is not good for society. What you want are nuclear families. You want people to be faithful to each other. You want them to be serious about their vows and all of that sort of thing in order to maintain a good society. But, if you're libertine in your society, you're going to be libertine about a lot of stuff. And our society is getting a lot more libertine, and it's not been beneficial for our society. It has diminished the role of the nuclear family. We have made it more difficult for poor families to have a man in the house. We've made it much more difficult for parents to be able to monitor what's going on with their own children in schools and in society in general. One of the big discussions now is about whether a child going through gender dysphoria, if a parent is trying to treat it in any other way than to affirm the dysphoria, in some states they can take the child away from the parents, and in fact do. It can mess up adoption policies and things like that. Things that really stabilize society are being undermined at a dramatic rate right now. And a lot of that, in biblical terms, especially in New Testament biblical terms, would be considered adulterous. So I don't know how far you want to take this, but they took it pretty far in biblical times, and right up to almost the modern era in our own society. The penalties vary depending on the society. Jesus, they had that woman brought to him who was caught in adultery, and the penalty was for her to be stoned. Okay, and he says, "Well, y'all, who's without sin, go ahead and cast the first stone." And they had to lay them stones down. Be careful who you're going to stone in society, because there's plenty of rocks to go around. It's like that. So, but what Jesus told her, I thought was interesting, that he did not condemn her, but he also said, "Go and sin no more." Okay, and I thought it interesting that if she was caught in adultery, then they also caught the guy, and they didn't drag him out, and he was supposed to be stoned too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, guess what? They didn't drag him out; they dragged her out. And I really think that's one of the problems that we have with prostitution and law enforcement in this country, that a lot of times they'll go after the prostitute, but they won't go after the guy who hires her. And they need to both go into pokey, as far as I'm concerned. That's a joint venture into an illegal transaction. If you're engaged in that, then you're breaking the law, and both parties should be penalized. Okay. Neither shall you steal. That's a tough one. There's a little bit of borrowing, there's a little bit of pilfering, there's a little bit of, all that goes on. I mean, whose pen is in your pocketbook, I love, Queen Street has this wonderful pen. I haven't given mine out yet, but the pen says, this pen was stolen from Queen Street United Methodist Church. You can bring it back at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. But as far as stealing from the church, that's not a good thing. I know that people have embezzled from churches and stuff like that. And my answer is, whatever they took is gaining interest in hell. So, but you're not supposed to take what doesn't belong to you. Obvious stuff. In this country, we're much looser about it. In Muslim countries, you don't steal. You don't. I could leave my vehicle parked on the street, totally unlocked, weapons on the seat. I would never do that. But just leave it there and nobody would touch it. They wouldn't look for anything. They wouldn't go through my rucksack. They wouldn't do anything. Nobody would touch anything that belonged to somebody else in an Islamic country. Now, they might cheat you on a deal. They might violate a contract, but as far as picking up something that doesn't belong to them, that could cost you a hand. So they don't do that. Neither shall you bear false witness against your neighbor. That is lying under oath. That is lying under oath. Okay? Anytime that there is a legal penalty involved in what you might be saying about somebody, then I consider this also gossip. If you're talking about somebody behind their back in order to ruin them, you take a look at what's going on in politics these days. Man, oh man, oh man. Lie about somebody behind their back. And now with AI, you can put somebody's face on somebody else's body, and it's just nuts. You can have somebody in their own voice saying something that they never ever said. All of that is bearing false witness. And if it's meant to diminish a person, to ruin them, then that's not right. Now, are there lies that are available? Yes, there are. Lying is an integral part of our society. If you watch sports and some basketball player does a pump fake, that's a lie. Okay. When I was in the Army, I dressed as if I was a bush, and somebody looking at me hopefully would think I was a bush and not me, and that was a lie. Okay. I put makeup on so that people would not think that I was me, that I was a bush. That's all lying. Camouflage is a lie. Makeup is a lie. Okay. We had one young lady in Desert Storm who wrote home to her mama that she really liked this guy, but he didn't really know what she looked like because she couldn't wear makeup. So, but we don't mind being lied to. We don't mind being lied to. Keep on doing it. There are some lies that are okay, and there's some lies that are not. Okay? Lying under oath.
White lies.
Yeah, if you want to call them white lies, okay? Or sometimes you can call it adaptation. But if you bear false witness against your neighbor, the implication is that you are doing something untruthful in order to diminish or put that person in jeopardy. And that is not allowed. Okay? Neither shall you covet your neighbor's wife. This is interesting because this is not an action, this is an attitude. Okay? What does it mean To covet. Anybody have an idea what it means to covet?
To want something somebody else has?
No. Not necessarily. Okay? It is more than wanting what somebody else has. Okay? Coveting means I want to have what they have so that they can't have it. And I do. It's not just a matter of wanting, it's a matter of denying. So you can see where having this motivation within you leads to all kinds of sins. Most of the commandments, 1 through 9, have to do with covetousness. The first sin that was ever committed was based on covetousness. What did the devil tell Adam and Eve?
Don't eat the fruit.
No, he didn't say that. He said, go ahead and eat the fruit.
Oh, that's sorry, Mike.
Yeah, but why? Why eat the fruit?
Because you don't have it, and
No, it's not about the fruit.
Be like God.
Disobeying God.
That's right. If you eat the fruit, you will be like God.
Mhm.
And he didn't lie. He said, you'll be like God and you'll know the difference between right and wrong. And they did. They lost their innocence at that point. Okay? So God knows the difference between right and wrong. Adam and Eve did not. They ate the fruit and found out. That's just the way it was. So everything is about covetousness. But you can't desire your neighbor's house or field or male or female slave. It's interesting that slavery is in the 10 Commandments. Oddly enough. Okay? Or ox or donkey or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. So covetousness has a malicious intent attached to it, always. So if I see my neighbor has something that's really cool and I'd like to have that, if I can, I'll go out and buy it. And in a way, I'm complimenting my neighbor by saying, you made a really good choice. I like that. I'm going to choose that too. Okay? As long as it's not a competition. Once it becomes a competition with your neighbor, then you are looking to get ahead and diminishing them. And that's part of covetousness. Not necessarily the same thing as sports, but why do people go to war? Because one country covets what another country has. And a classic example of that is the invasion of the Holy Land by Israel. They coveted what other people had. And they were going to take it at the cost of the other people's lives. They were going to have it so that the original owners could not have it. So this whole invasion that God is promising to these people is a form of covetousness in many ways. It's just that if God sanctions it, what could be wrong? It's kind of interesting how that works. I mean, we coveted all the land that the Native Americans had. We coveted Canada. That didn't work out so well. Just as well we didn't get it. But covetousness, all this colonialization of countries around the world was covetousness. All of it was, and it was a way of denying other people their own property. So watch out for that, because that's kind of the root. They say the love of money is the root of all evil. I think covetousness is the root of all evil. You want something that somebody else has, not something like what somebody else has. If you want what they have, then that's covetousness. Okay, any stuff about the commandments? Because we're going into the greatest commandment. in the next chapter, in chapter 6. So, okay. Well, God bless you. Have a great day. Enjoy the service today. I just saw a DS walk in, so be careful what you say. And God bless you all. I'll see you all next week.
Thank you.
You know, Dennis, you were talking about